You ever realize we actually live in Cyberpunk? Not the kind with neon samurai or badass chrome arms, but the sad bargain bin version. Like, yeah, technically we have cyberware now, except it's overpriced, it breaks, and half the time it just sucks. Billionaires basically run the government. Elon Musk tweets like he's the head of state. Ads follow us everywhere, sexualizing toothpaste and hamburgers like that's normal. And the cops, some of them are literally getting arrested for selling the drugs they confiscated. That's not sci fi, that's the news. And the wild thing is, it's not just Gen Z living through this, it's millennials too. The difference is, we grew up knowing the system was already broken, while they still remember when people actually believed in hard work pays off. They were told that if you studied hard, got a job, saved up, life would fall into place. Instead, they landed here with us, splitting rent, juggling side hustles, drowning in debt, and scrolling the same feeds just to distract from the weight of it all. So yeah, it's two flavors of the same dystopia. Gen Z feels like we were born into the glitch, like this was always the baseline. Millennials feel like they got bait and switch, promised a future they got patched into some lame cyberpunk DLC nobody asked for. Either way, we're all in the same lobby now, stuck in the lamest version of the future, trying to survive it with sarcasm and Wi-Fi. Oh, and shout out to the last Hearthian. Your comment on one of my last videos actually stuck with me and kind of sparked this whole one. It's weird how a random comment can hit harder than 1,000 ads, just make you feel like someone else out there sees the same cracks. So yeah, thanks for that. And if you're watching this and something I say resonates, drop it in the comments. I don't promise wisdom, but I'll read it at 2 a.m. Headset still warm, scrolling like the rest of us. So yeah, welcome to Cyberpunk, not the cool kind. The kind where you still work retail, still split rent, and the only neon you see is from a vague shop sign at 2 a.m. The first thing that hits me about this future we've landed in is how everything, literally everything, feels like an ad now. Like you can't even open your phone without being assaulted by someone trying to sell you something you didn't even think about wanting. And not just sell it in the weirdest, creepiest ways possible. Ads don't just want your money anymore, they want your soul. It sounds dramatic, I know. But think about it. Back in the day, an ad was just, here's a product, maybe you'll like it. Now, ads are engineered in labs to trigger your brain the same way slot machines do. Bright colors, fake smiles, just enough sexuality to keep your lizard brain engaged, even when you're scrolling half asleep. I saw an ad the other day, literally for bottled water, and they had some girl licking her lips in slow motion like it was a perfume commercial. It's water, bro. Calm down. That's the cyberpunk part, not neon lights and hacking into mainframes. It's that every single square inch of your attention is up for auction. We're not people anymore, we're eyeballs. Eyeballs that get sold to the highest bidder, and we know it's happening, but we still scroll. That's the messed up part. Sometimes I wonder if we even realize how much it shapes us. Like, you're on YouTube right now, watching me talk over some old gameplay. And next to this video, there are probably 5 thumbnails with half-naked people, or someone screaming into the camera, or some get-rich-quick scam disguised as productivity advice. And I'm not mad at you for clicking them, I do the same thing. It's like the system knows exactly what flavor of loneliness or boredom you're carrying that day, and serves it up on a silver platter. Oh, you're feeling empty? Here's an ad about finding love on an app that's basically designed to keep you single. Oh, you're broke? Here's a video about a guy who makes $1,000 a month drop shipping teeth whitening kits. This is what I mean when I say we live in the lamest cyberpunk dystopia. Like, imagine explaining this to someone in the 80s. Yeah, in the future, corporations will basically own your mind. They'll track everything you do, predict what you want before you know you want it, and then sell you back the illusion of happiness. That's scarier than robots with guns, honestly. But the irony is, we kind of like it. Or at least, we tolerate it. Because what's the alternative? Disconnect? Go off grid? Live in a cabin in the woods with no Wi-Fi? Yeah, sure, maybe for like a week, until you realize you can't order pizza at 2 a.m. or watch random people fall off skateboards on TikTok. The truth is, the ads win because we're addicted to the platforms that feed them. And the platforms win because they've made themselves essential. You don't use social media anymore, you exist in it. It's the water we swim in. And the craziest part? Ads aren't just ads anymore, they're culture. Memes, music, slang half the things we think are organic, or just the echo of some marketing campaign. Like how many songs blew up on TikTok because a label paid influencers to dance to them? How many trends started as ads disguised as jokes? Even rebellion gets commodified. You think you're being edgy by wearing a shirt with some ironic slogan, but that shirt is part of a billion-dollar anti-brand branding industry. Nothing is safe. Sometimes I think the real cyberpunk dystopia isn't the surveillance or the corruption. It's that we don't even notice the manipulation anymore. We're too busy laughing at it, reposting it, making it part of our identities. Haha, look at this gross ad sexualizing hamburgers. Cool, but you just gave it 1 million impressions. This system doesn't care if you love it or hate it, as long as you engage. And that's just ads. That's one slice of the pie. You zoom out a little, and the rest of the picture gets even darker. Because while we're all drowning in ads for energy drinks and dating apps, the people in charge, the billionaires, the corporations, the politicians who are basically sponsored like NASCAR drivers, They're playing a whole different game. We're arguing about which phone has the better camera, and they're quietly buying airports, ports, data centers, literal infrastructure. Stuff entire countries depend on. It makes me think of BlackRock, that giant investment company people barely talk about, but somehow they've got trillions under management, like literal trillions. At that point, you don't just influence markets, you own them. You don't just buy stocks, you buy governments. And if you don't know who's really running the world, maybe it's because you're not supposed to. That's cyberpunk. That's the dystopia. We're arguing about iPhones while they're buying the grid itself. And then, at the same time, the gap between rich and poor just keeps growing. Like every single year, it stretches further. And the funny thing is, the ads I was just talking about, they actually feed that gap. They sell us lifestyles we'll never afford, dreams we'll never live, and they make us feel like failures for not buying in. But at the end of the day, it's not even about us. We're just the fuel, the clicks, the purchases, the engagement. Humans are the resource, and that's where I'll leave this part for now. Because if ads are the wallpaper of our cyberpunk world, then the corruption underneath is the foundation. And trust me, it's just as rotten. So let's talk about corruption. Because if cyberpunk has one recurring theme, it's that the people meant to protect us are usually the most compromised. And I don't mean that in some edgy tinfoil hat way. I mean it in the most boring, depressing way possible. Cops dealing drugs, politicians cashing checks from lobbyists, judges scrolling their phones while corporations write the laws. That's our dystopia. There's no cinematic reveal, no grand conspiracy. It's just a bunch of people quietly rotting the system from the inside out. I read this story about a cop who literally had sex with people in his squad car, arrested dealers, then turned around and sold their drugs himself. And that's not from a movie, that's just Tuesday in the real world. When the line between law enforcement and organized crime gets blurry, what's the difference anymore? The badge doesn't mean order, it means power, and power gets abused every time. And the scariest part, we're numb to it. Like when a story about police corruption pops up on the news, nobody gasps anymore. Nobody says, oh my god, how could this happen? We just scroll past, mutter figures, and move on with our day. That's how dystopias work. Not with one big event that changes everything, but with a slow drip of bullshit until you can't tell the difference between normal and insane. It reminds me of something. In cyberpunk stories, cops are usually portrayed as these armored enforcers of corporate rule. And while we don't quite have mechs patrolling the streets yet, the spirit is the same. Who are cops really protecting? The people or the property of the powerful? Look around. Peaceful protesters get tear gassed. Billionaires' yachts stay safe. That tells you all you need to know. And when you combine that corruption with the surveillance state, that's when it gets truly dystopian. Because it's not just about what you do anymore, it's about what you might do. Algorithms flagging your posts, databases storing your movements, government subpoenaing your DMs. There's this idea that if you're not doing anything wrong, you have nothing to hide. But in a world where the definition of wrong can change overnight, that's a terrifying thought. Like think about cookies, not the fun kind. The ones you accept every time you visit a website because you're too tired to read the 30 pages of legalese. Those cookies track everything, your shopping habits, your location, even how long you lingered on a picture. And it doesn't stay with one company. It gets shared, sold, swapped. Before you know it, there's a digital ghost of you floating around the internet that probably knows you better than you know yourself. What you crave, what you fear, who you text at 2 a.m. That ghost doesn't belong to you. It belongs to whoever paid for it. And I don't think we fully realize what that means yet, because right now, it's harmless. It's ads for sneakers or a new show on Netflix. But the same data can be used for propaganda, for censorship, for controlling what you believe is possible. Imagine you're depressed, scrolling online. The algorithm doesn't cheer you up. It feeds you darker content. Why? Because sadness keeps you scrolling longer. That's not some evil genius plot. That's just business. But business becomes destiny. It's already happening. Countries experimenting with social credit systems. Governments leaning on tech companies to silence certain voices. Platforms deciding which opinions get boosted and which ones get buried. It's censorship, but privatized, so it doesn't feel like censorship. It just feels like, oops, nobody's seeing my post anymore. And it's weird because censorship isn't even always about silencing you. Sometimes it's about drowning you, flooding your feed with so much noise that your voice gets lost. Imagine screaming into the void, but the void is already full of a billion TikToks about cats dancing to sped-up pop songs. That's the modern version of control, not shutting you up, but making sure nobody hears you. And here's the part that messes me up. We keep saying Gen Z is the most online generation, like it's a badge of honor. But what if that just means we're the most exposed, the most watched? We grew up with social media not as a tool, but as a baseline reality. Our baby pictures are on Facebook. Our teenage mistakes are on Instagram. Our breakdowns are on Twitter. We're the first generation whose entire existence is archived, searchable, and sellable. That's not just being online, that's being owned. Sometimes I think about assisted dying in Canada. You know, how they're expanding it to people with mental illness. And it hits me like, damn, We live in a world where instead of fixing the system that makes people want to die, they just offer you death as a service, like it's healthcare. That's one of the most cyberpunk things I've ever heard. Not because it's futuristic, but because it's so brutally utilitarian. Human suffering isn't something to solve, it's something to manage, and if that means nudging you toward the exit, well, that's cheaper than therapy. And that's what ties all of this together. Ads, corruption, surveillance, censorship, death as a subscription plan. It all comes back to the same logic. Humans are resources, not individuals, not stories, just units in a system. Eyeballs to sell, data to harvest, votes to sway, consumers to burn out and replace. And the worst part is how quiet it all feels, how normal. Like it's not even shocking anymore. When I was a kid, I thought dystopias would feel loud. Explosions, riots, giant screens barking orders at you in the streets. But it doesn't feel like that at all. It feels like scrolling. It feels like exhaustion. It feels like debt. It feels like lying in bed at 2 a.m., staring at your phone, wondering why you're sad, and realizing the system already monetized your sadness before you even named it. And maybe that's why I say this is the lamest cyberpunk dystopia. Not because it isn't real, but because it is, and it's boring, it's banal, it's death by 1,000 push notifications, and we're so used to it, we can't even see the bars of the cage anymore. But if you zoom out again, if you take a step back from the ads and the cops and the surveillance, you start to see the bigger picture. The economic machine, the gap between rich and poor, stretching wider every year, and the terrifying truth that, for a lot of people, the future isn't about thriving. It's about surviving. I keep coming back to this one thought. In cyberpunk stories, there's always this massive gap between the elite and everyone else. And I think what unsettles me most is how familiar that's starting to feel, because you don't need to look at fiction anymore to see it. You just need to walk down your street. The numbers alone are enough to make you sick. The top 1% own more wealth than the rest of the world combined. Billionaires doubled their fortunes during the pandemic while regular people were waiting in food bank lines. Rent keeps climbing. Wages stay flat, and the cost of just existing feels like it's running a marathon you didn't sign up for. This isn't some abstract theory. It's not a debate on Twitter. It's the reality you feel every time you check your bank account and your chest gets tight. And it's not just about money. It's about control. Think about it. Corporations aren't just businesses anymore. They're basically shadow governments. BlackRock manages, what, $9 trillion in assets? That's more than the GDP of most countries. They don't need to run for office. They don't need to win elections. They already own the chessboard. Airports, power grids, water systems, pieces of the world that you can't live without, and they're buying them like monopoly properties. You and me, we're just pawns moving on their board. It's funny because in cyberpunk games, you always see these mega corporations with flashy logos and giant skyscrapers, but real life is more subtle. The most powerful corporations don't even advertise themselves to you. They don't have to. They work behind the scenes, pulling strings you'll never see, cashing in on decisions you'll never hear about. That's the scariest part. It's invisible. And then there are the billionaires, the faces we do see. Musk, Bezos, Zuckerberg. They don't just run companies. They shape culture, politics, even war. Musk can tank or skyrocket the stock market with a single tweet. Bezos builds rocket ships while his warehouse workers pee in bottles. Zuckerberg literally owns a chunk of human social interaction. These aren't just business guys. They're emperors in hoodies. And we treat them like quirky geniuses instead of the feudal lords they basically are. The thing about inequality is that it's not just about wealth being uneven. It's about dignity. When you're rich, the world bends for you. When you're poor, it squeezes you dry. You wait in lines, fill out forms, get denied loans, watch your paycheck vanish into rent. You get punished for being broke in a million tiny ways: fees, penalties, interest rates. Meanwhile, the rich don't just escape punishment, they escape reality. I saw a documentary that showed luxury bunkers being built for billionaires. Literal underground palaces, stocked with wine cellars, swimming pools, movie theaters. The idea is, when the world burns, they'll be safe. That's the most cyberpunk thing ever. The planet crumbles, people starve, and the rich treat apocalypse like a private vacation. It's like they're not even living in the same timeline as us. And I know someone's going to say, well, that's how it's always been. There's always been rich and poor. True. But the difference now is how fast the gap is growing, and how impossible it feels to bridge it. In the past, you could at least believe in the myth of upward mobility. Work hard, save money, climb the ladder. But for Gen Z, that ladder doesn't exist anymore. The rungs have been sawed off. We're told to hustle, to grind, to make content, to turn ourselves into brands. But at the end of the day, most of us are just treading water. And here's where it really messes with your head. The same corporations that crush us are also the ones selling us hope. Invest in crypto. Escape the rat race. Brought to you by a guy who already owns 5 houses. Manifest your dream life. Sponsored by a company that monetizes your every wish. Hope itself has become a product. And just like everything else, it's pay to win. Sometimes I feel like inequality isn't even the bug in the system. It's the feature. Like the whole thing is designed to keep us in our lanes. Keep us consuming, keep us working, keep us too tired to question why we're stuck. The poor feed the system, the rich own the system, and the rest of us just exist in the lag between paychecks. And then, just to add insult to injury, we get told it's our fault. Gen Z is lazy. They don't want to work, they just want handouts. Nah, we want to live. We want to not spend our 20s drowning in debt for degrees that don't guarantee jobs. We want rent that doesn't eat half our paycheck. We want healthcare that doesn't bankrupt us for getting sick. That's not laziness, that's survival. The most dystopian thing about inequality isn't the wealth itself, it's the gaslighting. The way older generations look at us and say, well, we bought a house at 23, why can't you? As if they weren't buying those houses for the price of what we now pay for rent in 3 months. The world changed. The system shifted. But instead of admitting it, they call us weak. That's the cruelty of it. And this is where the cyberpunk vibe really hits. Because cyberpunk isn't about the future being high-tech and cool. It's about the future being uneven. Tech for some, scraps for the rest. Augmented limbs for the rich, broken prosthetics for the poor. Neon skylines for the city center, slums in the shadows. And that's exactly what we're living through now. Tech companies talk about innovation, but most of us can't even afford basic healthcare. AI tools are supposed to make life easier, but they're already being used to cut jobs. Cyberware exists, but only for people with money, and even then, it malfunctions, it breaks, it scars you. That's why I keep calling it the lamest dystopia. Because we actually have the building blocks of cyberpunk. It's all here. Corruption, inequality, surveillance, AI, cyberware, but it's not badass. It's not cinematic. It's just exhausting. It's sitting in your apartment, scrolling through a feed, realizing you're living in the future, but it feels cheaper, lonelier, and more disappointing than you ever imagined. And here's the kicker, even though it sucks, we keep playing along, because what choice do we have? The game is rigged, but quitting isn't an option, and if that's not cyberpunk, I don't know what is. If inequality is the skeleton of this dystopia, then AI is the nervous system running through it. Because the more I think about it, the more I realize AI isn't just a tool, it's a mirror. It shows us exactly what kind of world we've built. And spoiler, it's not a flattering reflection. People talk about AI like it's this unstoppable wave of innovation, this thing that's going to make life easier. And yeah, maybe it does for some. But let's be real, for most of us, AI doesn't mean freedom. It means precarity. It means another job that can vanish overnight. Writers, designers, customer service reps, even coders, all looking over their shoulders, wondering when the machine takes their place. And the wild part? The people cheering the loudest for AI are the ones who already own everything. The same corporations that underpay workers are now bragging about how much money they'll save by replacing them. That's the part of cyberpunk that hits hardest, because in those stories, AI is never neutral. It's always serving someone. And in real life, it's serving the same people it always does, the rich. AI doesn't erase inequality. It automates it, it scales it, it takes the gap and pours concrete into it. And the narrative around AI is so twisted, we're told it's helping us. It'll take care of the boring tasks, free us up for creativity. But here's the thing, if the system doesn't value human creativity now, why would it suddenly value it when AI is doing the grunt work? More likely, they'll just expect us to do more for less. Same burnout, just faster. But it goes deeper than jobs. AI is shaping how we see ourselves. Think about recommendation algorithms. They're not just suggesting music or shows. They're shaping your mood, your beliefs, your identity. If you're sad, they feed you sad content. If you're angry, they feed you outrage. And the cycle continues until you're not even sure which emotions are yours and which ones the machine fed you because it kept you scrolling. It makes me wonder, what does it mean to be human when your emotions are optimized for engagement? What does it mean to have free will when your choices are nudged by invisible algorithms? That's not sci-fi. That's right now. And then there's cyberware. This one always makes me laugh, but like in a bleak way. We do have cyberware now, prosthetics, implants, brain interfaces in development. But unlike the movies, they're not sleek, glowing, futuristic marvels. They're clunky, expensive, fragile. And if they break, good luck. You're not a hero with a chrome arm. You're just broke with medical debt. That's the pattern of our cyberpunk world. We have the tech, but it's broken. We have the future, but it's unevenly distributed. The rich get enhancements, the poor get side effects. And it makes me think, was the fantasy of cyberpunk ever really about the tech? Or was it always about inequality? About the way humanity gets chopped up, sold, and rationed out depending on your bank account? Because that's what it feels like now. Humans as resources. Not people, not stories, just numbers in a spreadsheet. You're worth your productivity, your clicks, your ability to keep consuming. And when you can't keep up, when you're too sick, too poor, too broken, you're disposable, like literally disposable. Canada offering assisted dying to people with mental illness. I can't think of a more cyberpunk headline than that. Instead of fixing the world that makes people want to die, the solution is, well, death is cheaper. Press here to sign the consent form. That's not compassion, that's efficiency. And that's what scares me most. Not the neon lights, not the robots, not even the corruption. It's the efficiency, the way the system quietly, smoothly figures out how to squeeze every drop out of us. how to monetize sadness, how to monetize hope, how to monetize death itself. And we sit here, scrolling, playing along, because what else are we supposed to do? I think about how older generations laugh at us. They say Gen Z is dramatic, fragile, entitled, but maybe we're just awake enough to see the cracks. Maybe we can't unsee the fact that we were born into a world already rigged, that we didn't screw it up, we just inherited the mess. And now we're trying to survive in a system that feels more like a simulation glitching out every day. That's why it feels cyberpunk, not because it's glamorous, but because it's glitchy. It's broken in ways that almost feel designed, and we've become experts at coping with it. Dark humor, memes, irony. We make jokes about being depressed because if we didn't laugh, we'd scream. We scroll through TikToks about burnout because it's the only therapy most of us can afford. We turn pain into content because at least content gets views. Sometimes, I think that's our real cyberware. Not prosthetic arms or brain chips, but humor, sarcasm. The ability to take something unbearable and make it into a joke, into a meme, into something that lets us breathe for one more day. It's not badass, but it's survival. And maybe that's why this all feels so anticlimactic. Because the cyberpunk dystopia we're living in isn't cinematic. It's banal. It's waking up tired, scrolling through ads, watching billionaires play God while you try to figure out how to pay rent. It's living in a world that promised neon dreams and gave us broken screens. And yet, there's something almost poetic about it, something weirdly unifying. Because even though the system divides us, isolates us, drowns us in noise, there are moments, small ones, where you feel less alone. A comment that hits you at 2 a.m., a meme that makes you laugh harder than it should, a stranger who puts into words the thing you've been too tired to say. Those little glitches in the system remind me that maybe, just maybe, we're not as disposable as they want us to believe. The more I think about it, the more I realize the scariest part of this whole thing isn't that we're living in a cyberpunk dystopia. It's that we barely notice. We scroll, we laugh, we post, we complain, but we adapt. And that's the most dystopian thing of all. Not the chaos, not the corruption, but the silence, the numbness. I think about cyberpunk heroes sometimes, not the flashy ones with swords and cybernetic arms, but the broken ones, the ones just trying to survive, trying to carve out a little humanity in a world that treats them like parts in a machine. That's us. We're not heroes in the movie sense, but we're still resisting in our own quiet ways. Every time we laugh at the absurdity, every time we refuse to believe the lies, every time we reach out and make someone feel less alone, that's a kind of rebellion, and maybe that's enough for now. Not to fix everything, not to overthrow the billionaires or dismantle the corporations, but to remind each other we're still human, that we're not just resources, that even in the lamest cyberpunk dystopia ever, we can still glitch the system with something it can't fully monetize, real connection. So, yeah, welcome to the future. It's not neon, it's not glamorous, it's broken, uneven, boring, and terrifying in ways that barely make headlines anymore, but it's ours. And maybe the one thing they can't take from us is how we choose to live in it. How we find meaning in the cracks, how we refuse to let them write the story for us. And if you made it this far, thanks, for real. Sometimes I feel like I'm just ranting into the void. But every now and then, a comment or a message reminds me that someone's on the other side of the screen, nodding along, maybe feeling the same thing. That's what keeps me making these. So if any of this hit you, even a little, leave a comment. Or don't. No pressure. But know that I'll probably read it at 2 a.m., headset still warm, scrolling with tired eyes, and it'll remind me that even in this cyberpunk mess, we're still human, still here, still glitching the system together. Thanks for watching, even if you just had this on in the background.